So welcome. Thank you for bringing the body of Christ into this space. I'm so grateful for your presence here today. So we started a new series last week called Nice to Meet You. It's an introductory series that you can get to know me a little bit more, and also Tim's going to share a little bit during the sermon, so you get to know Tim and other people that are part of our leadership team of how this community and this vision is unfolding. And we're going to be talking about the particular ways that we ask people when they become a member of this community to be a part. And we ask people to be a part in 5 distinct ways that overlap: by your prayers, your presence, your gifts, witness, and service. And those are all loaded words. And we talked about prayer this last week, and our kids talked about prayer, and they created a prayer chain last week. And so our communion table, Piper's like, "Do you think it would be a good idea to do a prayer chain?" I'm like, "That's an amazing idea." And so it's here for us to how the kids are kind of experiencing this series as well. And so if it's your first time, second time, third time, or 30th time, this is a great series to kind of understand a little bit about this church. I hope that, if you're not a member of this community, that this might spark, some curiosity to become a member of this community. And if you want to begin that process, I would love to have a conversation as well about membership. And speaking of membership, let's just name the elephant in the room: is that membership in a church can be complicated, especially if your past has been complicated with church, because you say these vows before the church, and maybe you said them and nothing seemed to change, or nothing was fulfilled, or you felt like they let you down on the vows. And so when you hear this guy up here talking about, hey, think about joining a church, it might be like, yeah, thank you very much, but I don't think I am going to do that. And I have begun to think how we might think differently about church membership. There is some thought, I think, also within us that thinks when you're joining a church that I'm joining an institution. We're a United Methodist Church. If you didn't know that, welcome. Surprise! You might think, well, I'm not a United Methodist person. I didn't come from a United Methodist background, so why I can't be a member of this church because that's not my affiliated past, or I disagree with certain theological precepts, and so how could I join an institution when my theology doesn't align with what that church believes? And I don't have the answers to those questions, but I do have my experience to draw on in my own life as I reflected upon this. And this is, maybe you've heard this story before, but I'll kind of reiterate some of my story about how I'm in this particular place right now doing this particular thing. I got involved in church when I was 15 years old, and I had grown up going sporadically to the local United. I'm from a place called Niceville, Florida, and I had grown up going sporadically to the United Methodist Church. We went to Sunday school. I remember not liking Sunday school as a small kid, and I also remember thinking that church was just so incredibly boring, and just laying there and just wondering, it just felt like time had slowed down. And then, God's voice to me is like, yeah, you just wait, you're going to be that guy that's boring other kids. And so, and I think my parents finally got it. Why am I trying to force my kids in church? They don't want to be there. And so my parents eventually we didn't go to church anymore. And then entered my middle school, high school years as a preteen and a teenager. I would probably describe myself as somewhat of a loner. I could play in my room all day. I did not need another human being in my sphere. It just felt burdensome to go over to somebody's house. I know some people that is your thing. Like you love playing. Like me, I'm just like, when is this over? Like when can I go home? But part of that, spirit. I got to some point in my life like I really want community. I really wanted to belong somewhere. But also, I really it really came easier to other people, and it did not come easier to me. And so I was really trying to find my crew. And I think we all have gone through that journey in space through a myriad parts of our life. And I was in chorus class in 10th grade and loved chorus class. And I began to cut up with these guys in my class, and they did something remarkable after. It kind of gives me chill bumps right now. They invited me to hang out. That was the first time in my life, up until that point in my life, that I was invited to do something outside of school that I didn't have to seek out. Like I was the one being sought out. So we started doing it, and as I reflect upon what we were doing a lot of illegal things. We would go play golf and drive the golf carts into the woods. What else did we jumped off bridges. I had bought these CB radios, and they're like, these will be great because we're going to go throw water balloons at cars in the middle of the night. And so I'm like, great, well, I'll bring them, and I'll be the communication strategy, and I was having some of my friends got arrested for doing that later, but and you wouldn't do this now, but TPing people's houses, I loved doing that. And anytime somebody would TP my house, I'd be like, hold on, I caught you, but I know the neighbor next door. We'll go over there. That was my strategy. Loved all those things, and then one day, it just felt like a moment, they said, hey, do you want to go with us to church? And I'm just like, I thought we were having fun. Like, that's the last thing that I want to do is go to church. But I trusted them. I learned. I felt like I belonged, and so I gave them that space in my life. That I'll do that. And of course, there's a lot of micro moments, but I felt like walking into the space of this Baptist church that was right across the street from the United Methodist Church I grew up going to. I felt like the stars aligned. I'm pretty sure, and I don't know, most of y'all don't come in here thinking, I want to be that guy, and I want to be the one holding the bread, that, like me, I was just drawn to that, just from the moment I walked in, and as a little kid, I would pick up my grandma's Bible and I would preach from it, so there's all these things happening, I was just excited, and from the beginning, and I started to really have that desire from the front end. Hey, can I share at youth group? Can I preach a sermon? And they're like, dude, you just got here last week. I was soaked in it. My brother's King James Bible, I was just reading it and underlining. I didn't know what most of the stuff meant or the words. I was enthralled, and the Baptist church, I think they were just freaked out by me. Y'all invited this guy, and this guy is crazy. And I started to get really disappointed very fast. And they did this weird thing where they went to youth group at the Methodist church after the Baptist youth group. And so I started tagging along in that to the Methodist church, the boring church. And I started going into this weird, multiple church situation. And then one day the youth pastor looked at me. He's like, I see something in you, and I want to use that. And so, I started leading youth group little mini messages with the middle school. I started playing music, and I started doing all these things that the Baptist church was like, hold up. And then one day the associate pastor came to me. He's like, "You want to become a member at the Methodist Church?" I'm like, "Well, I kind of just did that at the Baptist Church." And I said, I was like, "Yes." And yeah, I feel like I'm more connected here. I belong more here. And I joined this church that I thought was so boring. And I was at the front of the church looking out at people. And they did this thing afterwards where they like shake hands. I've never seen this happen to anybody else, but I just started crying. Like, I will. I felt like this just spirit over me. And here's the thing about this story. I didn't know anything about Methodist doctrine, Methodist theology, the Book of Discipline, which is our book of laws, or how many committees we have. I knew none of that. But I knew this group of people loved me, and they saw something in me, and I wanted to respond. And those things came. And as I think about, we talk about presence today, and as we talk about discerning membership in this community, questions that I would want to ask is, do I feel like I'm seen in this community? Do I feel like I belong? And I think that's what we're doing when we come up here and we say, will you be present in the good times, the bad times, and all the times in between? I think that's what we're saying, is that, are you the kind of person that's going to show up for each other in our lives? The question is not, do you agree with every ounce of Methodist theology? And I know sometimes it's difficult to distinguish. But in my own experience, my transformation has been in the church that has showed I want to just take a moment to talk about this beautiful story. And what a gift, Amy, in your reading of that story. To me, the way you read it, I'm just like, I wish you would have come to my house on Monday and read that story to me. Because did you catch some of the words at the beginning that I somehow fast forward? She had spent all she had. She was in more pain, and she had no more options. She was at the last drop of existence that she had. And I thought this story, in a lot of ways, really represents what we're trying to embody by being present with one another, is what Jesus embodied in this moment. If you have space and time, you'll find that this story is in three Gospels. In that, in the book of Mark, it is sandwiched between the story of Jairus and this is a story that, in many ways, they overlap each other. But for our benefit today, I just want to focus in on this hemorrhaging woman. Jesus in this story is on his way in a crowd of people, moving on to help this daughter of this very important and significant. God bless you. God bless you. This very important and significant Jewish leader, Jairus. Jairus was someone important. He's someone that is named in this story. He is a significant person, and he has got Jesus' attention, and they're going to the house to take a look at his daughter. And as they're going, here's this woman that is laying on the ground. She is at her end. She is ostracized. She is marginalized. She has a chronic health condition. And most of all, she is religiously unclean because she is hemorrhaging and she is bleeding. The world does not see her. She is, for all our purposes, she is unseen. And so her life is spent begging and pleading for someone to help her. And she manages to touch Jesus' cloak on her way. and Jesus stops. And this dialogue between Jesus and his disciples, and he inquires, like, who touched him? And the disciples are like, always like, California beach guys, like, dude, big crowd, man. That's in my head. All wearing flip-flops, probably were. But yeah, I see his disciples, big crowd. Of course, you got touched by somebody, someone, whatever. It doesn't. And Jesus is insistent that something has just happened in this moment. And then he discovers it is this woman that had touched him. And we begin to see this beautiful unraveling of who Jesus is. That Jesus cares so deeply that Jairus is almost like, I'm going to park that right now. And right now it is about me and this person in front of me. And we see this, that Jesus is about being present with the most unlikely, the marginalized. And he takes this huge risk because this woman who had, and you don't know what Jesus is going to do in this moment because this woman is ritualistically unclean, and what has she just done? She has touched Jesus. And so Jesus now is ritualistically unclean. So she has pulled down Jesus with her by touching him. So it's like in this moment, you don't know, like, is Jesus going to scold her? And we begin to see Jesus doesn't even care about that. And then he says these words to her as he is present with her. Daughter. If you just imagine how big those words are to this person who is been walked by, who is deemed unclean and marginalized, unseen, that Jesus calls her daughter, insinuating you are a member of this family. You belong. Your faith has made you well. You aren't an outcast. Actually, you are a valued member of this family. The remarkable thing about this is that Jesus doesn't do any action in this whole story. He doesn't do anything except stop and to be present. And I'm often curious in this story of what is the miraculous miracle in this story? Is it this woman being made well, or is it this woman being humanized? The answer to the question of what it means to be present in each other's lives is a subjective answer. But there is one thing for sure, is that being present in one another's lives, it doesn't just happen. Is that we have to be intentional. We have to be willing to stop like Jesus did for one another. I think about our calendars. One word that I do not like is busy. I don't like telling people I'm busy, even if I am busy, because busy says I don't have time to be present with you. And our lives are all full, and we're all on our way to do something else. But presence calls us to stop. And so in some ways, to be present in one another's lives, to be present in one another's lives in the good times and in the bad times and all the times in between, that means we have to say no to things in our lives to be present. Maybe it is to carve out space to have coffee with someone in this community, or maybe it is to carve out space to send a kind message, or to walk across the room to say hello. Sometimes finding out what it means to be present in our stages and seasons of life can be a complicated question, but it's worth asking. I want to invite Tim to come up and share how presence is unfolding in his life.
I wanted to expand a little bit on, and then give you a little personal stories on what Jason was talking about. The thing about that story that I found interesting, and I did read the different stories in the Bible, and I thought probably one of the most critical things, I don't know if it falls under miraculous, was Jesus is on his way to do something pretty doggone important with a leader. And it's like, whoop, stop. And I just picture myself having blinders on saying, get out of my way, I got this job to do. And he's able to, in a big crowd and all that, and able to discern that. And I just found that to be very interesting. So, and so he was present. He was present. And I thought about other stories in the Bible. We've heard about the Samaritan, the Good Samaritan. We've heard about Peter. Maybe you've heard about Peter, who resurrects Dorcas from the dead. These are all examples, and I call this deliberate presence. The Samaritan is deliberate in stopping along this roadside to help this Jew. Peter travels some distance, and I know it was difficult because they walked everywhere back then, so he travels some sort of distance to go be with Dorcas, who is this caring woman in this community that's known for caring and mending clothes and all this stuff. He goes there to see her and tells everybody to leave the room, and he resurrects her from the dead. So that's another example of just being deliberately present. And so I guess I asked the question, have you ever been a recipient of somebody's deliberate presence? I spent a good part of my professional career managing people. I was dealing with complex engineering, technical issues, understanding compliance issues, dealing with the public, interacting with governing bodies, a lot of stuff. And I think I did an okay job. Now I'm retired, and I'm in the midst of daily chores, weekly chores, monthly chores. I have consulting work I do. I'm employed part-time. I have my own personal obligations. I can get very stressed. In fact, sometimes I can't even tell up from down. I get really kind of caught up, and I'll get paralyzed. Like, I don't know what to do next. I really struggle with applying some of those same professional skills in my personal life. But I always know that I can walk in our house, and I go find Dawn. And I can spew out all this stuff. Oh, I got all this going on. And in my confusion, in my anxiety, and she's not knowing anything I'm doing. She's kind of, I'm working on something, and she doesn't really know the details, but she always can straighten me out. She can perform triage. She helps me make a plan. I can move forward. She can really help me from walking off that cliff. I probably don't tell her enough how important she is for me, so thank you. So my next question, follow-up, is have you ever been there for someone else? Have you ever really impacted somebody else's life? And this reminds me of a mission story. Some of you know that I have participated in a young adult mission called Appalachian Service Project. And I've done it for many years. It's very near and dear to me. Several times, my work team has been tasked with real difficult projects. You see, not only are team leaders asked to improve somebody's house or living conditions, but team leaders must support their team members. That includes skill training, spirituality. Remember, these are young adults. Spirituality, sensitivity, even safety, all these kind of things. You must also work with this ASP summer staff, which are college kids. And sometimes they don't really understand what they're asking maybe a group of young adults to do. So you have to work with them. You have to make sure that the task is achievable. Do we even have the resources? Do we have the time? You have to work with the family. We're going to disrupt your living conditions here for a week. And sometimes you got to work with the weather. So you're dealing with all these things. And as a team leader, I can really, really get like focused. I feel like Jesus walking to this, to this leader's home. So I know several times where my plans were made. I had my to-do list, I had my supply list, I had my tool selection, I had my order of operation. What we're going to do first, we're going to do the second, we're going to do the third, all that. But I would do that only to have some young adult on my team point out a more pressing issue, a more important task. It was not that roof. It was not that floor that needed to be replaced. It was not the siding. It was not a window. It was being present for that family. Okay? Playing with those children in the family, taking time with a single mom to let her tell me how she's able to make ends meet. It was sitting down with the disabled coal miner. We worked in a lot of areas where a lot of coal mining, Kentucky and Northern Virginia. He'd be telling me about an old work story of some sort. Or sitting with an elderly couple that wants to tell me about those good old days, which don't sound real good to me. But so I often ask those young adults, those kids that are on our team, I'll also tell them, you'll never know the impact you have on someone's life. In fact, I'd bet most of us here do not know, and we'll never know the impact we have on somebody. I'm just thankful I had a teenage girl that pointed out to me that sometimes being present is more important than that roof. So I ask you today, think about your presence here at Storied Church and that person that was once present for you. So thank you.